Hey y'all, Michelle Raza here with Finding Yourself SATX Life Coaching coming out of San Antonio, Texas. Bringing you the Finding Yourself Book Club. And today we're going to talk about Recovering from Emotionally Immature Parents by Dr. Gibson. We're going to wrap up chapter 9, which is Updating Your Self-Concept. We've been on this chapter for quite a while, but that's because it's very worthy. If you don't have your own copy of this book, please do pick it up. It is very worthwhile. And as I've mentioned in previous videos, I do not get compensated by Dr. Gibson, Dr. Gottman, or any of the other amazing authors that we cover in our book club. If you like this content and if it's worthwhile to you, please do like and subscribe. It really does help us little YouTubers. And check out my website. I'm at www.findingyourselfsatx.com. There in the Contact Us information, you can find my contact information and send me an email for your first free consult. There's no obligation thereafter, and we'll just talk for an hour, and then you decide if this is right for you. Thank you. Okay, so I am going to kind of skim over the last section of this chapter, only because we have spent so much time on the other sections, and I am excited to get to Codependent No More by Melody Beatty, and that's going to be the next work that we cover as part of this book club. Okay, identify and challenge distorted self-concepts. It's crucial to uproot and replace distorted self-concepts that you may have gotten from EI parenting. Pay attention to any roles or feelings about yourself that hold you back and challenge them. Here's how to deal with some of the toughest ones. You are more than a role. Stay out of the EIP's dramas. Instead of relating to others as individuals, EIPs lump people into distorted, exaggerated roles. They tend to see every situation as a story populated by victims, aggressors, or rescuers. As they reduce reality to these storylines, EIPs jump to conclusions about who's bad, who's innocent, and who should step in to save them. This distorted role-playing is called the drama triangle, which is illustrated in the diagram below. So here you see the drama triangle. It has, and I have to look over, the aggressor, the rescuer, and the victim. And actually, Melody Beatty talks about this drama triangle as well, and she talks about how codependents move from one to the other in sequence in part of their relations with other people. So really interesting stuff here. This is page 168, 169. Refuse to be dominated or subjugated. If you're okay with others telling you what to think, feel, or do, you are accustomed to being subjugated. But subjugation undermines your emotional autonomy and mental freedom and should not be tolerated. Your life isn't theirs to direct. Plus, it's illogical to think that an EIP knows what's best. Once you claim your right to make your own decisions and choices, others' attempts at domination will stand out to you as starkly inappropriate. When you have a clear and self-respecting self-concept, your integrity and dignity will no longer allow emotional takeovers and coercions. Question any interaction in which you feel inferior or lacking. Feelings of inferiority can show you exactly where you are mistaken in your self-concept. It's fine to admire other people, but there is something wrong if you see someone as superior to you in worth. Try not to idealize or idolize anybody. You can enjoy them more if you stay their equal. Feeling inferior or unworthy is like a flashing red light letting you know an EIRS, which is I forgot what it stands for. Give me a second to look it up. Okay, I found it. The Emotionally Immature Relationship System. So this is where emotionally immature people don't regulate their self-esteem and emotional stability well on their own. They need others to keep them on an even keel by treating them just so. To accomplish this, they act in ways that make other people feel responsible for keeping them happy. They do this through complex, extremely subtle cues that influence others to feel certain ways. I call this the emotionally immature relationship system. And that's where, if you remember, she talks about like a baby crying until you magically figure out what the baby needs. That's natural and normal for an infant who cannot articulate, but it's not for an EIP or for an adult. It's just the way that they know how to communicate. So sorry, that threw me off just a bit, but I'm trying to find where I was. Okay, admittedly, today is not my day. But I'm going to go back. So it was question any interaction in which you feel inferior or lacking. Feeling inferior or unworthy is like a flashing red light letting you know an EIRS or a drama triangle may be sucking you in. If you learn to interpret inferiority sensations as warnings that someone is trying to use you for their own self-esteem needs, you can step back and maintain your autonomy and positive self-concept. Being around an admired person who is emotionally mature will feel different. Instead of making you feel inferior, they will inspire you to pursue your goals. Emotionally mature people show an inclusive, respectful, and co-equal attitude toward other people. They elevate you with them rather than make you feel less than. I have my little four-legged coworker in here with me today. I don't know if you heard him. He was outside meowing, so I had to pause and let him in. And he may jump up here. I'll show him to you if he does. He's actually, it was a funny story, and I know I'm getting off track, but we went to the beach for Christmas, and I was going with a girlfriend who had an animal, a pug, super cute dog. And so ends up, long story short, they couldn't make it, but we had already reserved an animal-friendly room. And then this little guy, this cat, came up to us, and he was just skin and bones, so skinny, so scraggly looking, and he had one eye shut. He still has one eye shut. And I fed him, and I told my daughter, I said, if he's still around when we come back, I'll think about it, this and this. And long story short, he let me put a triple antibiotic on his eye, the eye that was closed shut. And after that, I was a goner. So we took him home, took him to the vet. He's now plump. His hair is growing back in. He got all his shots, and he's just very vocal. He will let you know with either words or actions that he likes or doesn't like what you're doing. And he's kind of the king of the house. He has our two big dogs. He controls everything. The two big dogs control nothing, despite their difference in size. So totally random facts here. Let me get back on track. Free your self-concept from the toxic distortions of shame. Shame has a special role in distorting your self-concept because, as we saw in Chapter 2, shame doesn't seem like an emotion. It feels like who you are. This has serious consequences for your self-concept. Shame is such an excruciating experience that it makes people want to disappear, sink through the floor, or die of embarrassment. And I can attest that shame is very powerful in some of the people that I've worked with. I mean, it's easier to cut off members of your family or your friends than deal with the shame associated in confronting some issues. Remember from Chapter 2 that when parents treat you as if you're bad, your self-concept can be burdened with what psychologist Jerry Duvinsky calls a core shame identity. And so then there's an exercise here called taking the sting out of shame, and we will flip back to do it at the end of covering this chapter. So as per usual, I will have the exercise at the end of the video. Affirm your self-concept as a loving person. EIPs see you as cold and uncaring if you don't jump into their problems with both feet. If you hesitate to sacrifice yourself for them, they call your basic goodness into question. They can make you think you're not loving enough. Doubting your capacity for love is one of the most damaging self-distortions that can come out of your relationship with EI parents. Your inability to save them, make them happy, or make them feel loved enough can make you worry that you might be emotionally lacking. For example, one woman grew up believing her heart was like a frozen pea, while another said she feared dating because men would see there was not enough to her. Both of these people had emotionally insatiable EI parents who never validated how emotionally generous their hearts really were. And if you've been watching all of these videos, or if you've read this book, you would understand that you cannot make anyone else happy or make them feel loved enough. So that's where she's saying, like, if you have an EIP who expects you to be their source of happiness and love, you'll never be able to fulfill it, because they need to find their own happiness, and love comes within yourself. So you have to love yourself, and then you share that love with the world. You cannot expect your child, even though they are in a lot of cases. Like, I remember specifically going to pick up my baby from daycare and saying, oh, here's where I left my happiness for the day. But you can't put that burden on your child. And for a lot of us that were raised with EIPs, that burden is on us. We are literally the pride and joy of the parent, to where if we mess up, not only do we have to deal with our own pain and failure of messing up, but now our parents have lost all of their happiness because they have no independent source of happiness of their own life. So it's a really toxic situation. Realize the emotional costs of a diminished self-concept. Many people have lived with a negative self-concept so long that they can no longer feel how it affects them. Instead of feeling indignation or hurt feelings, these people have conditioned themselves to accept subjugation and disrespect. This dulls the pain of being treated badly, but it's important to awaken to the high cost of a low self-concept. Once they finally realize how painful it is to feel so diminished by others, they can do something about it. As Tony Robbins has described, sometimes the best way to motivate yourself to change is by deliberately amplifying how painful the old way is. For instance, let's say you laughed along with family members who made fun of you in an unkind way, just as they did in your childhood. You could just brush it off as a familiar script you've played a million times. But what if you stopped and intentionally felt how the derogatory remarks emotionally affected you? What if you realized what it was like to be scared to defend yourself, or worse, to laugh along with your tormentors? If you really let it sink in, you might begin to feel compassion for yourself. And finally, how does it feel to have a healthy self-concept? A positive self-concept gets a good start from a parent's connection and loving support. But there is also an individual spark in each of us that supports resilience and self-recovery no matter what your history. Perhaps it comes from an intimate relationship with yourself, in which you just know you are destined for more. Some of us, even in the absence of nurturing relationship, seem to have mysterious inner resources that allow us to be our own conscious companion, enabling us to learn and grow our way out of adverse circumstances. This source of inner friendship with ourselves can give us self-care, self-comforting, and even self-protective instincts against exploitative people. You'll know you have a healthy self-concept When you have gotten to know yourself and found yourself good, you will cherish your individuality, your interests, your passions, your ideals, plus those new strengths you're working on. With a healthy self-concept, you're not obsessed with correcting what's wrong with you. You're just trying to fulfill your potential and become more genuinely yourself. You have a healthy self-concept when your individuality is precious to you and you don't want to be anybody or anything other than who you are. This kind of self-concept is your birthright as a human being. Okay, so we're going to backtrack and do the exercise. By questioning shame, you can unmask it as just an emotion foisted on you by others, instead of being your core identity. Instead of absorbing shame into your self-concept, you could treat it as just another emotion. Here's how to do that. Exercise. Take the sting out of shame. Think of something you have felt ashamed about. As you revisit the moment, keep reminding yourself this is just an emotion you're feeling, not something bad about you. Duvinsky recommends writing down how the shame feels while repeatedly relabeling it as nothing more than a painful emotion. Tell yourself, this feels awful, but it's just a feeling. It could never, ever be a statement of who I am. This feeling of shame is just an emotion, like any other emotion. By facing it this way, shame becomes just another painful feeling you can easily survive. Once you face these feelings, twinges of shame will no longer feel so catastrophic. You may even see shame as a helpful warning that someone is trying to make you feel bad so they can feel better about themselves. Seeing shame for what it is not only helps you free from others' emotional coercions, but repairs your self-concept as well. So I think this is a very interesting exercise, trying to label or relabel shame as just another emotion. I'd caution that you do want to differentiate between shame that is justified and valid, and then the type of shame that is being foisted on you by an EIP. So shame is very powerful for a reason, and it's so that we learn from the things that we've done in our life that are not so great, and we avoid doing them in the future. So what you want to do in the positive experience of shame is taking those lessons, those life lessons. One of the other doctors that I've studied, Dr. Judd Brewer, talks a lot about the different voices in your head. Like you have the narrator, the critic, all these different roles, like your thoughts in your mind that are kind of nagging at you sometimes. And shame, I think, can be one of those. When you have intrusive thoughts about things that you feel shameful about, you can thank them. You can thank your shame. Thank you, shame, for teaching me those lessons that I'm never going to repeat again. You can thank your critic, right? Thank you, critic, for letting me know how I could improve. You could take that, do that mental exercise of thanking those roles, because they're all trying to teach you something. It doesn't mean that they need to dominate. It doesn't mean that you need to carry your shame with you everywhere you go and it colors every relationship that you have. Just take the good from it. The good from the shame are the lessons that you've learned that you don't want to repeat. So say thank you, take the lessons, and then move on. So next time we will move into Dr. Gibson's chapter 10, which I believe is the last chapter of this book. Very excited to bring it to you. This information that I provide to you, of course, free of charge on YouTube, is it's part of the Finding Yourself book club, and it's because I would like for you to pick up copies of these books and work through them. They're awesome. They're so helpful. Dr. Gottman's works have really helped me grow my EQ. I actually have a playlist that is EQ shorts with just the chapter 3 of the 7 principles of making marriage work, that kind of gives you the nitty-gritty, the short version of how to quickly improve your emotional intelligence quotient. Everything that I have here on YouTube, which is now over 150 videos, is really just the tip of the iceberg. If you'd like a free consultation, then I can provide you customized content and help you in your own journey. So please do check out my website. I'm at www.findingyourselfsatx.com. Thanks for spending time with me on this beautiful cold Thursday here in San Antonio. And I hope to catch you guys soon on Monday. Take care. Have a great weekend.